Hello, Pistachios. My name is Eric Piccioni. I am documenting my journey to financial freedom to help people educate themselves on how to break out of that corporate shell and really escape the 9 to 5. I'm also on the journey to financial freedom, but I'd like to think that I've learned a couple things along the way to help me expedite the path a bit. I've definitely paid my dues investment-wise, and I've learned from really intelligent people. Read hundreds of books to really shortcut my path, and there's some lessons that I've learned that I'm very passionate about, so I want to talk directly at the camera. It's also more for my future self, my future family. I hope it helps at least one person that watches this, but forgive me if I'm very emotional towards some of these topics, but I think it's just more about the economy, or the state of the economy right now, and where things are headed, and what are we doing to invest our money, and what are we doing, and what's our game plan moving forward. So right now I have a vending machine business, some rental properties. We have 2 rental properties that we own. I house hack one of them, so I rent out a part of the house on Airbnb to reduce our mortgage payment a little bit. So it helps a little bit, but the vending business is actually one that I really enjoy. But I think in terms of the long-term path to wealth, not a bad game to play to get a vending business going. It's actually very cost effective when you compare it to real estate and what have you. But just thinking long-term in like how we want our life to go and where we want our life to go, it's very hard to build a sustainable lifestyle when your earnings are dependent on your time. Active income is the common phrase. So your job, your W-2, 1099, whatever you want to phrase it as, your active income can only go up so much because you're essentially capped based on what the market demands. And not a very fun game to play, because you're really just playing this game of the corporate ladder, where you got to kiss some ass, shake some hands, and kiss some babies, or kiss some hands and shake some babies, whatever your interests. But what I've always found to be hard is to level up in income over time. There's only certain careers that allow you to do that relatively quickly, and one of them is my preference is sales. Listen, all jobs suck. I think there's maybe 5% of the workforce that genuinely enjoys what they do, and then there's a percentage that gets paid enough to kind of be blinded by the shitty work that they do. I think sales is one of those industries outside of like software engineering that you can make some pretty hefty paychecks, and you don't have to have an extensive education. There's other jobs that you're paid directly based on the time that you put in, like a set hourly pay. Sales is different. You might have a base pay plus commission, or you might have commission only, assuming the job title, the job role makes sense. It's not a bad pursuit to have. So I actually really like sales for that reason, because it's a performance-based pay. The more that you sell, the more money you make, and yada yada. So in this economy, especially when things are wildly expensive to the point where I'm just not even in the mood to buy stuff anymore, I think it's just like, all right, screw going on these lavish weekend getaways. I think it's just better to just save our money and just, whenever we get to the point that we can put that money away and do something with our lifestyle, let's do it. But for the time being, let's just save, because a lot of people, unfortunately, are in a place where they can't really save anything outside of their basic needs, their basic level of income. And the shitty advice out there is just like, well, you're just lazy, or just work harder. And it's like, you don't really have to work a ton harder to make higher levels of income. Again, like going back to my preference, sales, I don't work extreme hours. I don't work 80 hours a week, and I'm very comfortable with my wage, with my commissions that I get, because you get paid based on the value that you bring to the marketplace, yada yada. But when I look at all of my my paychecks over the course of time, it's almost like the less that I've worked, the more that I've gotten paid. And it's really interesting because I'm just selling the right things. I'm in the right environment. I'm in the right role to sell, and my pay has gone up because of that. You know, I used to knock doors and all this stuff, and I hated that job, but you know, it's stepping stone, and I think it makes me better for who I am. Now, in this world where things are just wildly expensive, I do think one of the best ways that you can really progress is far and away changing your job, changing your income, you know, finding a way to set up a consistent, reliable source of revenue for yourself, for your family, and just being able to live more comfortably, you know, because I used to make maybe $2,000 a month, maybe $3,000, and it sucks. Like, that's a shitty amount of pay. I'll be honest, and people make less than that. It's very hard to really get ahead in life when you're making that kind of money. So when I changed jobs and I changed like industries and what have you, that really started to create a lot more of a buffer for our finances. And one step above that, there is a short-term sacrifice that needs to be made in terms of your income. So for me, I was working 2 jobs for just about a year over the past 12 months. 2 full-time jobs. It sucked. It really did. But again, if you want to win the game in life, you have to change the rules a little bit. And I think traditional society is like, you got to work your way up, stay in the company for 40 years, invest in a 401k, yada, yada. That to me just doesn't resonate. I get sick to my stomach thinking about people that are trapped, that feel like they have no way out. And it sucks to say like, oh, just work 2 jobs. But I mean, there's people out there that work 2 or 3 jobs. I genuinely think sales is definitely a good way out. I'm not trying to like promote them. And that industry, it's a shitty industry in and of itself, but every job sucks in some way, I'll be honest. But I think once you can start to separate yourself from this active income, you know, whether you can invest in some kind of stock. I'm not even a fan of stocks either, because you get taxed pretty heavily on them. Preferably for me, it's real estate, because first and foremost, your biggest expense is going to be your housing. If you're doing this lifestyle game somewhat traditionally or correctly, you're likely going to spend the most amount of money on your house. And if you're not, you might need to evaluate, because if you're spending more money on your cars, you got to change that a little. So if your biggest expense is your house, if you are able to save up enough to get a property, let's say it's a duplex, like that would make the most sense. If you can swing it, if you've got a family and stuff like that, you know, if you got a wife and kids, duplex for sure, or some kind of property like a single family with a detached unit, so you can rent out those other units and reduce your housing expense. Otherwise, if you can get a single family house, set up a situation with roommates where you rent out each room, you know, you either get your mortgage completely covered or have a little bit extra and actually get paid to live in your house. You know, and some people go crazy, they live on the couch and they rent out all their bedrooms. I've never been a fan of that kind of approach, but again, desperate times, you got to change the rules a little bit to win the game. So I don't think that's against or out of the question. But I think that the way that I've really been able to separate from this like lifestyle creep rat race term where just life is constantly pulling you down is really just raising your income. And I think the 2 main ways to do that is, 1, saving as much as you can by cutting all of the unnecessary expenses. So finding areas that you can improve. You can only do this so much though. So you can only cut out, you know, restaurants and movies and subscriptions to the point where, you know, okay, cool, like basic necessities is $1,000 or $1,500 a month, then what? You can't like only eat ramen your whole life. Like that's an unreasonable or an unrealistic approach to living a decent life, because what's the point of saving all this money if you're gonna die because your health is out of whack? Now, the other side of it is if you want to really get ahead and like start saving a ton of money, is also just increasing your income. I think it's the easier of the two. So if you're able to get a property, save on your biggest expense, and then have that money to be able to put towards other things, ideally getting more properties over time, that to me makes the most sense. And I think the problem is the advice nowadays is like from people that are already 7, 8, 12, 30 steps ahead of most of us. They just throw out this advice like it's super easy. Listen, I'm not saying my path is better than others, but I'm just thinking logically, like out of all the approaches that I've ever taken with business investments, just jobs, things like that, the areas that have allowed me to progress the fastest has strictly just been being focused, disciplined, yada yada, like the traditional stuff, but then also just working in short-term sprints to get out of a long-term dangerous situation. So like paying off debt, for example, working your ass off to pay off debt is worth it to me. Even if you have to work multiple jobs or work in shitty jobs just to get that taken care of, I think it's worth it. So long term, when it comes to investing, the only thing that I can genuinely say is like a worthwhile pursuit, unless you're planning on building a vending business and like staying in one spot for a long time, I think real estate genuinely is the key to really stepping up and like slowly separating yourself from this rat race. Because you got to think, if you're able to cash flow, call it $200 to $300 a door or a unit, and you do that even like 4 times, if you can get 4 properties on paper, super simple to just say like, oh, just get 4 properties. It's going to take a while. It definitely will. But if you're living in one of the units that you get and you rent out all the others, you can get there exponentially faster, and it's a snowball effect. So fast forward 5, maybe 10 years, and you've got yourself into a really, really, really good financial position. To me, that's completely worth it, because if you're looking at this from a traditional standpoint of work your way up in the corporate ladder, save for the 401k, retirement funds, like I'm not a financial advisor and I don't claim to be one. I'm just thinking logically from my end. I know there's plenty of people out there that disagree with me because, managing properties isn't necessarily easy, but I don't manage my own properties. I have a property manager that does all that for me. So long term, the way I see it is you'll build a much better foundation for your future, to me, if you can just buy properties and then do that maybe 4 times. If you can get 4 duplexes or 4 triplexes or 4 quadplexes, hell, even 4 single families, but one of the single families you rent out each of the units, reduce your biggest expense, and you can save more than 50% of your income. I just do not see how you would not be able to live a much better life faster, because the way that they say in these retirement accounts and everything is you got to save 30, 40 years of your income, keep investing, and then eventually one day maybe you'll be able to get away and retire. I think that's bullshit. I either think A, you got to invest or work multiple jobs or start a business. If you can do all 3, that's going to really turn the wheels faster for you. Like I would think just a secured income for now of 1 or 2 jobs, maybe 1 really good sales job or 2 mediocre jobs that can complement each other. If you can find them both remote, that's perfect. Build that up and then slowly put money away to buy a property or start a reliable business, again, like vending, and just start creating ways to build up your income. That gives you the leverage to really do some crazy things with. Fast forward 5 years, you just cannot do that with stocks. Like it's going to take $1, $2, maybe even $3 million to really be able to in stocks to be able to make some moves. But with real estate, you have this thing called leverage, so that you put 20% down into a property, easy math, 100K property, 20% down payment, 20K can get you a $100,000 property. Now that $100,000 you have under your belt, you're also reducing your taxes, you're getting cash flow along the way, and you're also able to benefit from appreciation. So over the long term, fast forward 30 years, if you just make the minimum monthly payment, you're looking at a property that's maybe 200, 300K in 30 years. that's completely yours to do as you want with. Now you do that a couple times. Let's say you do that 10 years. Every year you get a property for 100K. Not easy to do, I'm just saying, easy example. You know, your net worth is going to be exponentially better, and then you can do some crazy stuff. You can 1031, pass over the the payment that you would have made for taxes into the next property, and just keep like upgrading the investments, so that maybe one of the deals that you did, you now have a beachfront property in California or Florida, and you can Airbnb it and blah 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 and make like 200K a year. So it's really just interesting. I'm ranting right now because I've been in a lot of your shoes, and my daughter, my family will watch this in the future, and I'll think back to this time, because honestly, in the past year, 2 years is where things really started to change. And it wasn't until I started thinking bigger and trying to like shake shit up that I really started to see progress, because I was just always in this mindset of, let me just pay the bills, let me just put food on the table, and that's all we did. That's all we were ever able to do, is just put food on the table. We were just able to like get by. But it wasn't until I was like, no, fuck this. Like, we're not gonna just do the cycle and just keep this shit going forever. We're gonna figure out ways to get out of this. And that's where I just started really going and setting bigger goals. So one of my big goals was, at the time, was we're gonna hit $20,000 in revenue, or $20,000 in income per month by like April 2024, something like that. And you start asking yourself, how can I do that? And you put pieces in place subconsciously, even. Like, you start making decisions differently when you start making bigger goals like that. So I think it's once you can start setting these almost crazy goals, then you start to work towards it. You don't have to know how you're going to get there. You just have to know that that's where you're going to go. And soon enough, things naturally just start popping up. You have opportunities that you just never thought were possible that will just show up. But you have to put yourself out there. You can't just be like, I want to make $1 million, and then just sit back and have your hands out like this. You have to work towards it. Now, whatever work is to you, it could be different. Like, I'm not saying to just work harder. I think you just need to know people, have good connections with people, just find ways to improve, you know, constantly learn new things, read books, YouTube University, just constantly thinking of what's the next step that you can do to get to this place of a good financial lifestyle. Because money does solve a lot of things. It does solve a lot of problems. And then I would even go so far as to say it does make you happier, because you have more ability to do things that you want. I'm not saying like, you know, you'll be magically happier one day with more money. I feel like I'm more anxious now that we're in a little bit better financial situation than when I wasn't, because I have more to lose. But I'm not as stressed when I spend money, because I know that we have it, and you know, we've been in a place where we didn't have it, so I'm more responsible with my money. But anyway, I just wanted to rant for a little bit and just maybe give it a little bit of hopefully a gold nugget in there somewhere. So I appreciate whoever's watching. Again, I'm trying to find like this closing remark statement on YouTube to share, but the one that I like a lot is, in one of my favorite sayings, is, if you can't win the game, you got to change the rules. And if you can't change the rules, just ignore them. And I think that goes a long way, especially in the corporate world, where, you know, the traditional path, cool. If you want to be 55, 60, 65, maybe have $1 million, $3 million in the bank and live off of that your whole life, cool. For me, that's not the path that I want. That's not the path that I want for my family. Like, I want to be rich when I'm 35, when I'm 45 for sure, and then beyond that. So that's the path we're going to take, is more of the real estate side of things. I think with the right decisions and the right moves, we can definitely get there. So thank you so much for watching. God bless. Stay tuned.